is Josie, and alongside with David, we will be talking about the federal ban of, we're on the affirmative side of the federal ban of the recreational use of marijuana, and that it should be repealed. Before I get onto my outline, I'd like to discuss some statements that our opposing side said. First of all, he didn't cite any sources throughout his speech. He mentioned that there was problems that by legalizing marijuana, those farms that do plant marijuana, there's going to be a lot more crime that would be involved in those areas. However, in Denver, it's been proved that crime rates near those marijuana dispensaries, crime rates have been lowered. Also, he mentioned that by students using marijuana, it's kind of like a gateway drug to use marijuana. However, it's been shown that students, regardless whether or not they wanted to, a recent study by the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse, they found that 40% of students, 40% of teens could get marijuana within a day. Another quarter said they could get it within an hour. And another portion of the survey, teens between the ages 12 and 17 say it's easier to get marijuana than to buy cigarettes, beer, or prescription drugs. This number is up by 37% in 2007. So our significance claim is that too much money is being spent on enforcing the ban on marijuana. Billions of dollars are spent each year wasted each year as a result of the ban. There are many different figures that are being exposed right now. Just because we don't have any legal facts, because marijuana is illegal at the moment, we can compare it to alcohol, because it is, or unlike alcohol, which is legal. Unlike alcohol that is legal, it's hard for us to narrow down what exactly the figures are. So example, the Marijuana Policy Project reports that in 2007, $42 billion is what our current marijuana laws cost American taxpayers that they paid in 2007. According to a study by researcher John Getman, a PhD, a bigger breakdown is that $10.7 billion in direct law enforcement costs and $31.1 billion in lost revenues. That may be an underestimate, at least on the law enforcement side, since Getman made his calculations before the FBI released its latest arrest statistics in late September. The new FBI states shows an all-time record of 829,627 marijuana arrests in 2006 and $43,000 more than in 2005. This policy project also further states that that's like arresting every single man and woman and a child in North Dakota, plus every man and woman and child in Des Moines, Iowa, on marijuana charges every year. Arrests on marijuana possession, not sales or trafficking, just possession, totaled about $700,000. By comparison, there were $600,000 arrests for last year for all violent crimes combined. The mind reels that always for such a massive sum of money that could be put to use for. That $42 billion could be a massive tax cut, and that would put an extra $140 in the pockets of every person in the country, $560 for the family of four. Another estimate is that that $42 billion could be put to use for our current teachers, and that would offer them a 30% raise, and then we would still have some money left over. Despite all efforts, marijuana is still more accessible to high school students more than ever. The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Law reports that a recent study by the National Center of Addiction and Substance Abuse at the Columbia University has results that in their study that 40% of teens could get marijuana within a day, like I said earlier, and another quarter said they could get it within an hour. In another portion of the survey, teens between the age of 12 and 17 said it's easier to get marijuana than buy cigarettes, beers, or prescription drugs. That number is up 37% from 2007. The huge investments in enforcement have consistently delivered the opposite of their stated goals, to reduce drug production, supply, and use. Instead, they have created a vast criminal market. Back in 2010, Yomeli Ortega stated that law enforcement officials estimated that the U.S. black market in marijuana was worth $41 billion, and that's a large amount of money that could be pocketed into U.S. revenues. The legalization of marijuana could cut prison spending for those incarcerated for marijuana offenses. S.E. Smith reported that 1 in 4 people in prison are solely in jail or in prison solely for the reasons of nonviolent drug offenses, including possession, sales, and repeat offenses related to marijuana. Also, in 2010, Harvard economist Jeffrey Marin estimated more than $8 billion in annual savings in law enforcement costs if marijuana were legalized. Instead of wasting so much money on direct law enforcement initiatives merely to investigate suspected growers, traffickers, and dealers, the government could focus on pressing initiatives. Again, taxing marijuana would bring in an incredible large amount of revenue into the United States. Average annual trade in marijuana is estimated at $113 billion, which represents nearly $45 billion in taxes slipping through our fingers, according to Harvard economist Jeffrey Marin again. In conclusion, I'm not saying that marijuana should be unregulated. Studies still find that marijuana have potentially harmful effects on teens and young adults' brains, including development of schizophrenia, and we should remain cautious until dangers are more clear. Legalizing marijuana across the country would just mean more enforcement, and we'll be able to look at closely at how marijuana can affect us and how we should be able to closely regulate and monitor more. Thank you.